2 Kings chapter 4. And one wife of the sons of the prophets yelled to Elisha, saying, "Your bondman, my husband, died, and you know that your bondman was fearing the Lord. And the moneylender came to take my 2 sons for bondmen to himself." And Elisha said to her, "What should I do for you? Announce it to me. What is there to you in the house?" And she said, "There is not to your bondwoman one thing in the house, only a vessel of olive oil in the house, which I anoint with." And he said to her, "Go, you ask for yourself vessels from outside, from all your neighbors, empty vessels, not a few. And you shall enter and lock the door after you and after your sons, and shall pour out into these vessels, and the one being filled you shall take away." And she went forth from him and did thus. And she locked the door after herself and after her sons, and they drew near to her. And she poured until the vessels were filled. And she said to her sons, "Bring near to me a vessel." And they said to her, "There is not yet a vessel." And the olive oil stopped. And she came and reported to the man of God. And he said to her, "Go and render the olive oil for sale, and pay your interest, and you and your sons shall live by the rest." And came a day, and Elisha passed over into Shunem, and there was a great woman there, and she took hold of him to eat bread. And it came to pass, whenever it was fit for him to enter, that he turned aside there to eat bread. And the woman said to her husband, "Behold, indeed, I know that this is a holy man of God, who travels unto us continually. We should indeed make for him a small upper room, and we should put for him there a bed, and a table, and a chair, and a lampstand. And it will be in his coming to us that he shall turn aside there." And a day came, and he entered there, and he turned aside into the upper room, and went to bed there. And he said to Gehazi his servant, "Call this Shunammite." And he called her, and she stood before him. And he said to him, "Say indeed to her, Behold, you startled us all with this change of state. What shall we do for you? Is there to you a word to say to the king, or to the ruler of the force?" And she said, "I dwell in the midst of my people." And he said to Gehazi, "What must be done for her?" And Gehazi said, "That by all means a son is not to her, and her husband is old." And he said, "Call her." And he called her, and she stood by the door. And Elisha said to her, "At this time next year, about this hour, and living, you shall be holding a son." But she said, "No, O master, O man of God, you should not disappoint your bondwoman." And the woman conceived, and bore a son at this same time, about the same hour living, as Elisha spoke to her. And the boy matured, and it came to pass, the boy went forth to his father, to the ones harvesting. And he said to his father, "My head, my head." And he said to the servant, "Carry him to his mother." And he lifted him, and carried him in to his mother, and laid him down to rest upon her knees until midday. And he died. And she bore him, and rested him upon the bed of the man of God, and locked after him, and went forth. And she called her husband, and said, "Send indeed for me one of the servants, and one of the donkeys, and I shall run unto the man of God, and I shall return. And he said, "Why is it that you should go to him today? It is not a new moon nor a Sabbath." And she said, "Peace." And she saddled the donkey and said to her servant, "You lead and go. Do not wait for me to mount. For if I said to you, 'Go,' then you shall go, and shall come to the man of God in Mount Carmel." And she went, and came unto the man of God in the mountain. And it came to pass, as the man of God saw her right opposite, that he said to Gehazi his servant, "Behold, that Shunammite. Now run to meet her, and you shall say to her, 'Is peace to you? Is peace to your husband? Is peace to the boy?' And she said, 'Peace.' And she straighthened to the man of God in the mountain, and she seized his feet. And Gehazi approached to thrust her away, and the man of God said to him, 'Allow her, for her soul severely pains her. And the Lord concealed it from me, and announced it not to me.' And she said, 'Did I ask a son from my master? Did I not say, do not mislead with me?' And Elisha said to Gehazi, 'Tie up your loin, and take my staff in your hand, and go. And if you should find a man in the way, you shall not bless him. And if a man should bless you, you shall not answer him. And you shall place my staff upon the face of the boy.' And the mother of the boy said, 'As the Lord lives, and as your soul lives, shall I leave you behind?' And Elisha rose up and went after her. And Gehazi went in front of them, and placed the staff upon the face of the boy. And there was not a sound, and there was not a hearing anything. And he returned to meet him, and he reported to him, saying, 'The boy was not arisen.' And Elisha entered into the house, and behold, the boy, having died, was resting upon his bed. And Elisha entered, and locked the door after the two of them. And he prayed to the Lord, and he ascended, and bedded down upon the boy, and put his mouth upon his mouth, and his eyes upon his eyes, and his hands upon his hands. And he bent upon him, and warmed through the flesh of the boy. And he returned, and went about the house this side and that side, and he ascended and bent downwards upon the boy for 7 times. And the boy opened his eyes. And Elisha yelled out loud to Gehazi and said, 'Call this Shunammite.' And he called her, and she entered to him. And Elisha said, 'Receive your son.' And the woman entered and fell at his feet, did obeisance upon the ground, and took her son, and went forth. And Elisha returned to Gilgal, and the famine was in the land, and the sons of the prophets sat down before him. And Elisha said to his servant, 'Stand by the great kettle, and boil stew for the sons of the prophets.' And he went forth into the field to collect together herbs, and he found a vine in the field, and he collected together from it a wild gourd to fill his cloak. And he entered and put it into the kettle of the stew, but they did not know. And he poured out to the men to eat, and it came to pass in their eating from out of the stew that they yelled out and said, 'Death is in the kettle, O man of God!' And they were not able to eat. And he said, 'You take flour and put it in the kettle.' And they put. And Elisha said to Gehazi, 'Pour out to the people and let them eat.' And there was not a bad thing still in the kettle. And a man came from out of Baal Shalisha, and brought to the man of God first produce of 20 bread loaves of barley, and dried clusters of figs. And he said, 'Give them to the people, and let them eat.' And his minister said, What should I give before this 100 men? And he said, Give to the people, and let them eat. For thus says the Lord, They shall eat, and they shall leave over. And they ate, and left behind according to the saying of the Lord.